ALP System Deal Analysis. Today we'll discuss the ALP deal, how it's structured, and how profits are made in a ALP deal. Let's take the purchase price as $400,000. So we're going to put it on a 3-year open term. What open terms means, the mortgage can be paid off at any time without penalty. So, and we're putting a 20% down, which means $80,000, and the mortgage amount is going to be $320,000. Let's take the interest rate. Right now it's 1.45, but for our purposes, let's take it as 2%. And amortization, we're going to take the longest amortization possible, so it will be 30 years. Why do we take longer amortization? Just to lower down the monthly payments, because cash is more important. Cash flow is more important to us. So that's why we're going to take long-term amortization. Since the interest rates are so low, so it does not really affect too much in terms of whether we take a shorter or longer term amortization. The monthly payment is $1,181.46. Let's say the property taxes are roughly little bit less than 1%, which is $3,500, and the insurance is roughly about $1,000. So property and interest is going to be $1,181.46. Property taxes on monthly basis are $291.67, insurance $83.33. So the total PD means principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is going to be $1,566.46. So when we are purchasing the property under the ALP system for the client, the tenant buyer, the tenant buyer is responsible for the closing costs. And let's say the closing cost is $10,000 for a $400,000 purchase. So the future price is going to be calculated like this: $400,000 plus the $10,000 closing cost plus the appreciation. So in ALP system, during this period, we take the appreciation as 6%. So for the first year, it's going to be $434,600. Second year purchase price is going to be $460,676, and the third year price is $488,316.56. The reason we are doing 6% is because for the last few years, the market has been appreciating around 10 to 11%, and so normally the rate was around 5% appreciation, but lately we have raised to 6%. Let's look at what's going to be the monthly payment for the tenant buyer. If the purchase price is $400,000, closing cost is $10,000, and the down payment is $20,000. So normally we'll take the interest rate as 3.99 to 4.99. The reason for that is because the client is paying very small down payment. If a client is paying $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000, there's no way they will qualify with any A lender. So the deal will be done in normal cases with a B lender because there's not enough down payment. Secondly, the client will have to pay CMHC insurance. With CMHC insurance is if the client, even if the deal is going with the A lender and the client has the CMHC insurance to pay, they will end up paying 3-4% of the CMHC insurance. So even if we are charging the client 3.99 to 4.99, it is not much because it still works out cheaper for them. So the amortization will take us 25 years, not 30 years. The reason for that is the down payment is less than 20%. So the monthly mortgage amount in this case is going to be $1,996.82, and the taxes is $3,500. So the way we calculate taxes is just in case the taxes are raised each year by the municipality so that we don't have to recalculate and raise back the tax portion, because once a contract is signed, the client is going to be paying the same amount for the 3 years. So the way we calculate is we add 10% to the property taxes. So $3,500 plus 10%, that will make it $3,850 divided by 12, so that $320.83. Plus the insurance is $83.33. The tenant buyer is paying the insurance for the house because we are purchasing the property on behalf. And the management fee, we add a $250 management fee. The reason for that is because anytime you manage any rental property or any property, there are some costs involved. So to cover those costs, we add a $250 management fee. So the monthly total for the client is going to be $26.50. So the monthly rent is going to be $26.50.98. Under the ALP system, we require a minimum additional payment of $300. This is to help the tenant buyer save extra funds. In order to help the tenant buyer save enough money for the down payment, additional payment of minimum payment of $300 is required. The tenant buyer is encouraged to pay more than $300 and he's incentivized by a bonus. The bigger amount he pays each month towards his down payment, the bigger the bonus is. Tenant buyer pays $26.50.98 each month, additional rent of $300. That means the total monthly payment is $2,965.98. And that's the income from the investor's point of view. And investors' monthly expenses are $1,566.46 as we calculated earlier. So the net cash flow for the investor is $1,384.52. Additional rent bonus, which is called boosted saving bonus, is calculated like this. If the tenant pays more than $300, a 20% bonus of $300 is paid to the client, which is like $60. If the tenant buyer pays more than $600 and 22%, and if it's paid more than $900 a month of additional rent, then 24%. And if it's more than $1,200, then 26%. It's more than $1,500. It doesn't matter what the amount is. The maximum bonus that's given to the tenant buyer is $400. The idea behind this is to encourage the tenant buyer to save more and more money each month. So let's say the tenant buyer pays $1,500. He will get an additional $400. So his monthly saving will be $1,900, which will help him shortcut the period in terms of saving the enough amount for his down payment. So on top of that, the tenant buyer is getting 28% of interest on his additional savings. And there's no other way that the tenant buyer will be able to get this kind of savings or returns on his money. So it's best for him to save here. So if we calculate on the amortization calculator with a purchase price of $400,000, 3-year term, 20% down payment, mortgage amount $320, 2% interest per annum, and amortization of 3 years. The principal pay down in 3 years will be $21,355.02. This amount becomes additional profit for the investor. Now let's calculate how much the deposit the client has saved at the end of the 3 years. So let's say the client paid $20,000 deposit at the start of the term, was paying additional rent of $300. And so and was paying monthly payment of $2950.98, and the purchase price in 3 years $488,316.56. So let's calculate the down payment. The boosted saving bonus will be $60 per month times 36 months. That's $2,160. The additional rent at $300 times 36 months, that's $10,800. The deposit was $20,000, so the total deposit saved is $32,960. Let's calculate if the tenant buyer pays additional rent of $600, then how much will be the total deposit saved up. So let's calculate the down payment. So the boosted saving bonus will be $132 per month times 36. That's $4,752. And the additional rent is $600 times 36. That's $21,600. The deposit was $20,000. So total saving or the total deposit is $46,352, which is almost 9.49% of the purchase price of the tenant buyer, which has helped him save tremendously. So because he started with 5% and he's reaching almost 10%. So this will help him qualify for a mortgage if his credit score has improved enough to qualify with the 10% down payment to purchase the house. In terms of profit for the investor received a $20,000 down payment. Principal pay down was $21,355.02. The monthly cash flow was $1,384.52 times 36 months. That comes to $49,842.72. The additional rent that the investor has received is $21,600 in case the tenant buyer is paying $600 a month of additional rent. So the total income received and accumulated is $112,797.34 minus the deposit credit to the tenant buyer of $46,352, which gives a net profit of $66,445.74. Remember, the house is worth $400,000. The tenant buyer has given $20,000 deposit and the investor is putting 20% down, which means the net that the investor is putting is $60,000. So it brings the ROI, the return on investment, to 110.74% in 3 years, which is roughly almost like 36%, over 30% each year, which is an excellent return on investment. Nowhere can you invest so safe and so secure with such kind of returns. The profit for the investor. Investor received a $20,000 down payment. The principal pay down is $21,355.02. The monthly cash flow is $1,384.52 monthly times 36 months. That's $49,842.72. And if the tenant pays an additional rent of $300, which brings an additional income of $10,800. So the total received and saved is $101,997.74. The deposit credit in this case will be $32,960, giving the investor a net profit of $69,037.74. Given that the investor buyer has only invested net of $60,000, so that brings his return on investment to 115.06%, which is an excellent return in terms of returns, because nowhere can the tenant buyer can invest over 38% and get over 38% constant return for 3 years continuously. In order to qualify for a mortgage of $400,000, the investor needed almost $100,000 of income. But to purchase the next property, this property will be creating him rental income of $39,470, and the additional rent of $600 will create another $7,200 of income, which gives a total of $45,473 of income. The beauty about the ALP system is that the more properties you buy, the higher your income is going to be, because with purchase of each property, your income increases more than your expenses. So this creates a surplus of income, which helps you qualify for more and more purchase of properties and more mortgage in terms of your investments. So roughly every two houses you buy is going to help you create enough income to buy the third house. So that way, once you have a bunch of properties, it helps you create a ripple effect. In order to qualify for a mortgage of $400,000, the investor needed almost $100,000 of income. But to purchase the next property, this property will be creating him rental income of $39,470, and the additional rent of $600 will create another $7,200 of income, which gives a total of $45,473 of income. The beauty about the ALP system is that the more properties you buy, the higher your income is going to be, because with purchase of each property, your income increases more than your expenses. So this creates a surplus of income, which helps you qualify for more and more purchase of properties and more mortgage in terms of your investments. So every two houses you buy is going to help you create enough income to buy the third house. So that way, once you have a bunch of properties, it helps you create a ripple effect. So in case the tenant buyer is paying an additional rent of $300, then you as an investor will have an additional income of $43,017.60. Don't forget, you will have also your mortgage, which the bank will be taking into account, and your property taxes for this property. So we'll have to minus that, but still it's way more income than your expenses. So this has a positive impact in terms of that. If you're buying fix and flip, if you're doing any other kind of rental property investment, the average investor normally makes about $200 or $300 or sometimes $100 in the rental income. And a lot of investors, vast majority of the investors, especially those who invest in condos, they have a negative cash flow. So once they buy one property, they cannot qualify to purchase the next property because of the negative cash flow. Or even the rental investors, they cannot qualify for more because the first property has already become a burden on their income. So the ALP system works totally different. That's why we encourage the investors to pay us, the tenant buyers, to pay us additional rent. The higher the additional rent they pay, I know we'll have to pay boosted saving bonus, which is a small percentage in terms of the benefits. The ALP system is a little bit more complex than the normal rent to own or normal lease option, because the bigger the down payment the tenant buyer pays, the less appreciation is added, which acts as an incentive, because as an investor, if you're receiving more down payment, let's say the tenant buyer is giving you 10% and you're purchasing the investment property with 20% down. So instead of putting 20% down of your own money, now you're putting only 10% of your money. And there are cases when we are in distress from the distressed sellers, the tenant buyer may end up paying 20% of the down payment. And so you have hardly any investment done in the property, and you are still getting a 3% appreciation with zero investment or zero down. And the next difference is the split of the difference between the appraisal value and the appreciation value. Let's say a tenant buyer is buying a property for $400,000. After 3 years, the purchase value is $480,000. But due to the current hot market situation, the appraisal came at $550,000. So if the investor was in a normal rent-to-own contract, they would be buying at $480,000, and they would have to come up with, let's say, 10 or 20% of the down payment, okay, which they may not have, or they may not qualify enough to purchase the property. But if they are purchasing under the ALP system, if they're purchasing the property, if for $550,000, whatever the appraised value, so there's a difference of $70,000 between $480 and $550. The property has appreciated in value by almost $70,000. So in this case, the investor and the tenant buyer split the profits according to the agreed schedule. Sometimes it's 1/3 the investor, and 2/3 the tenant buyer. Now the tenant buyer has received an additional down payment of $50,000, which helps him save enough down payment to purchase the house even with 20% down out of the value. And secondly, because of the house prices do not fall, because he is purchasing at the normal market value instead of lower than the market value. So this helps the investor buyer, and it's helped the investor save extra profits, or get an extra income or get extra profit because of the profit sharing between the appraised value and the difference between the appraised and appreciated value. So with this system, both the tenant buyer and the investors work together to really make the value appreciate in the market, which works for the benefit of both parties. The additional beauty of the split system is that it guarantees the tenant buyer will have more than enough down payment to purchase the property from the investor. As is the market. If the market is appreciating in value, this strategy works for the benefit of the both. In case the property prices remain stagnant or do not go over the appreciated value, then the investor and the tenant do not make any additional profit. And what happens if the properties fall lower than the appreciated value? So if the property prices fall, the tenant buyer has a right to walk away from the property, but in that case, they will lose the deposits. They will lose all the credits that they were supposed to receive. So it's the best in both the interest of both the investor and the tenant buyers to extend the period. So normally, investors are going to extend the period for another 12 months. So this gives the buyer another chance to wait for the property prices to go up. In Canada, normally the prices don't fall like that, especially in the median or below median price houses. But in the US, this thing happens because of the different market strategies or different market situations.